Good morning, guys. I hope you're all doing well today. I'm going to continue reading my first novel, the next excerpt of it, Black and White Odyssey of Eden, where I left off last time. So let's go ahead and have at this. Where do I go now? Thomas thought. Thomas, the scientist hollered in a muffled tone through his gas mask, no more than 100 feet in front of him. The voice was strangely familiar to him, Thomas thought. He looked over in its direction. There he was, standing before Thomas. How did he not notice him standing there? As if merely in the corner of his eye, in the back corridors of his thoughts, Thomas knew this man somehow. "Everyone, follow him," Thomas said without hesitation. The uncertainty within him quelled to a murmur, a horror that he had managed to shield from the children. Exhausted from the adrenaline pumping through their bodies, the children surrounded the scientist, many gasping for air, and some crying. "Where do we go, sir?" Thomas asked the scientist. "Who are you?" The scientist knew what was coming, though had never walked this path. He scarcely knew where to go from here himself. Above all else, there was one thing he did know. He needed to give them hope. To stand like a rock. He would show them where to go. His faults to make them all his guinea pigs, and a grand experiment built to save them. The gas mask proved to be more of a strategic benefit than the scientist thought. It not only protected him from the chlorine gas he knew was coming toward them, but also hid the terror behind his eyes. The scientist hesitated, looking upon the children in confusion. This had never happened before. So many things were changing, and he was winging it. "This way," he hollered. He knew he had to get them as far away from their location as possible. To these tortured souls before him, he appeared as a mountain, everlasting, impenetrable. In a sea of hopelessness, a new variable appeared, a new chance at salvation. "Where do I go?" the scientist pleaded in his mind, a mind that was cauterized with the burns of constant failure. "I can't let them down." Suddenly, despite the commotion, or perhaps in spite of it, one of the rarest of sights on any calm day landed upon the tip of his scimitar. It was a white mourning dove, sticks in its beak, apparently preparing a nest in some distant location. It took refuge for a few seconds upon the shining steel in his hand, gently fluttering its wings to clear away the dust that had accumulated from the blasts. The calmness within him from the surety of his failure left him still, motionless enough for this symbol of beauty to not be jostled away from him. It appeared to look up at him, in his eyes, then fluttered to the north, dodging tree branches and falling pine needles as it did. He stood stunned for a moment, at the most unlikely of events to occur in the most trying of circumstances, and for that instant, he thought it was a sign. It was a data point, and he was, after all, a scientist. Maybe they were the same. It did not matter now. Nature, he thought, had its way of being resilient, finding niches of survival even in the most adverse of conditions. This bird was flying toward safety, somehow. It had to be. It was still alive, despite the death surrounding them in every direction. He could follow it. It was his candle in the darkness. "This way!" The stronger, bigger children carried the smaller and injured ones, paying forward all the strength they could muster from their tiny legs, following Thomas, who was following this mysterious trench-coated man. His hands caressed instruments of death, yet urged them to stay true on a bearing of what they hoped was life. Behind them, The mortar containing the green gas from the previous history exploded, once more releasing its noxious cloud upon the world. It occupied the exact same space as before, but their group did not. Anxious and mortified, the scientist halted the march. He knew they had escaped this disaster, but he needed to see. Never before in all his 500 years of searching had anything even remotely similar to this ever happened. He had managed to change the trajectory of a single soldier's life, which cascaded into Thomas following him out of the forest, and the tiniest, though most profound of symbols urging him farther forward. That's this excerpt. I'll come at you with the next one later. Love you all. Peace.